drop the intro. Welcome to the Inner Hoe Uprising, the podcast about sex, love, and dating from the perspective of me, Sam, one black, non-monogamous, pansexual feminist hoe who is double cheeked up and double masked up on a Tuesday afternoon and whose pronouns are she and her.
And Akua, who didn't think about an intro, so I'll just be regular Akua today, a black, female, demisexual, mental health parent, and all of that, pronouns she and her.
We love it. We love to see it. Every episode of the Inner Hoe Uprising works like this. Myself and my lovely rotating co-hosts talk about sex, love, and dating as it pertains to current events in the world, our lives, and yours. And occasionally we hit you with interviews with insightful folks or do deep dive episodes on a topic of our choice. This episode, we're packing up, but not really because it is still a pandemic, but we're heading to the Southwest. And we're talking all about sex, love, and dating as a black, fat femme in the southwestern United States. Plus, we're getting into academia and organizing work in the realm of race, sexuality, and the body.
And if you would like to follow along with the conversation had on this podcast on social media, you can do so by using the hashtag #InnerHoeUprising so we can see it, and the hashtag PodIn so other people can see it. If you would like to follow us on social media, you can do so at @InnerHoeUprising without the G on Twitter, at @InnerHoeUprising on Instagram and Facebook. You can also join our Facebook group by searching Inner Hoe Uprising Cummunity. That is CUMMUNITY. And head over to innerhoeuprising.com to pay a hoe.
Shout out to Queen Latifah, and also shout out to the people on YouTube. So if you're on YouTube watching us and if you're freaking with the vision and down with the vibes, do us a favor and hit subscribe. If you're supportive of the hoes and want to see our success spike all the way up to the top, do us a favor and click like all the way at the bottom of the video. If you want to keep the conversation going during your time spent, do us a favor and comment with your thoughts and opinions. And please click the like bell. Otherwise, you might end up in hell. We can't confirm or deny that. I don't know. The word is still out. The word is still out. And if you want to pay us to speak virtually at your school or conference about sex positivity, black feminism, podcasting, or other kinds of topics that we discuss on this here show, or if you'd like us to host a consent, pleasure, or dating virtual workshop for your organization, we would love to do all the things. So to book us, you can send us a line to ihupodcast@gmail.com. That email address is in the show notes for this episode. And we are starting it off just hot and ready this episode. We're getting into things. We're getting hot because we're going to Arizona. Which is a lot hotter than here, I think. I don't know. Our guests will let us know. But let's introduce our guest and topic of the day in a segment that we call Fuck It.
Yes. So today we are going to be speaking with Karlyn Bradley, pronouns he, him, they, them. And he is a black, fat, queer femme scholar, community organizer, artist, educator, and a Southern California native who is currently residing in Tucson, Arizona, or the ancestral lands of the Tohono O'odham and Pascoa Yaqui people. He is pursuing academic degrees in both political science and gender and women's studies at the University of Arizona. When they are not being an academic hoe or organizing in the community, they enjoy hanging out with their friends, cooking a good meal, engaging in literary and visual arts, and working on their 2 podcasts. Welcome, Karlyn.
Welcome.
Hey.
Hello. I'm so excited for this. Yes, this has been a journey to get here, but I'm so excited to be here and to talk with y'all. It's very surreal that it's happening because I'm fangirling, right? Because it's just really interesting how things work out. So I actually started listening to IHU a little bit before the pandemic. Someone that I organized in the community with was the one who introduced me to the podcast. They were like, oh my gosh, they're like, you need to listen to this podcast. So shout out to Maritza for introducing me to IHU. And then I've listened to, I think, every single episode of the show. And the hoes, y'all really got me through the pandemic. Like when it first started, I was like, well, shit, I'm stuck in my house. Let me listen to these like Black queer people. And it honestly felt like I was having a kiki with people. And it was really great. So thank you for getting me through the beginning parts of the pandemic, because y'all really held me down.
Our pleasure.
But yes,
Our pleasure.
I'm very excited to be here and to be in conversation with you. So for a little bit of context for folks, because you did actually interview someone else that was from Tucson.
Yes.
I think, I don't remember,
Kiawi.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So
shout out to Kiawi.
who I actually have met before.
Oh my gosh, it really is a community out here. I love it.
I met them. They performed at an event that was hosted by an organization that I used to work for, that I will not name because the organization is a piece of shit. But they were at this event. The taco sauce performed.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I heard the episode, I was just like, okay, yeah, that's great. That's not the experience that I have had in Tucson. And that was when, and I remember you all were like, oh my gosh, yes, we need to come to Tucson, we need to party, and it's gonna be fun. And I was just like, yes, you should come to Tucson and talk to the Black people. Because Black folks here, we have a very different experience than like non-Black POCs do, because similarly to like how like Black people have a very different experience in the United States, right? And so I really wanted, and then actually, before I get to the other piece, and then I think that there were some folks who had written in who were also from Arizona, and they were like, yeah, we're not having a good time.
Yes. So that is actually
ugly. Like, are we doing it wrong? Like, are we the only ones? And I was listening to those things. I was like, no, you're not. Like, it's literally hard out here for all of us.
Yeah.
So then I was just like, okay, yes, I definitely would love to be on the show and to like talk about that, because I was like, cool. There are other Black femmes who are also like, what the fuck?
So you done did the second half of our intro. You've explained the context quite contextually. So Karlyn is referring to an episode that we did with Kiawi called My Two-Spirit Femme Bitch Slapped Me in the Face, which is a great episode. For context, Kiawi is a person who is Yaqui. They are indigenous.
Yaqui is how you pronounce that.
She just did this amazing episode about her experience coming into her two-spirit identity, and was like talking about parties and all that kind of stuff. And me and Akua were like, yeah, we gotta go party. But we did have many people write in who were also in the southwestern United States who were like, it sucks over here, we are having a shitty time dating. And we did an open call, like, if you are someone who is in the southwestern United States and you are Black and have had this shitty experiences, what's going on over there? And Karlyn wrote in 2020, and that was where you fucked up, because we didn't answer a goddamn email that whole year.
I did.
No.
But yeah, we reconnected in 2021, and Karlyn has been a really awesome part of our Patreon community as well, just out here singing and cooking and all of the various things. So yeah, we're very excited to have you on the show. So you are not originally from Arizona, are we correct?
Yes, no, I'm from Southern California. So I grew up in a cute little suburb in Glendora. That's my hometown. It was white as fuck though. Like,
sounds white.
So shout out to all of the people who are listening to on IHU who might be in Glendora. Hi, I'm from your town. So that's where I grew up. I grew up there, and I moved to Arizona in 2013. So I spent like most of my life in my hometown. I went to elementary school, middle school, high school, and then even my community college was in my hometown. And then in 2013, my cousin actually was the first one. He came to Tucson, to the University of Arizona in 2012, and he was like, bitch. He was like, you're trying to get your degree, you're trying to like move on and grow as a person, come to Arizona. And I was like, I don't know about all that. And so it literally was a year of my cousin telling me about all of the things that he was doing I'm at the University of Arizona. And then I was like, okay, I will apply. And then there was some other shit that also happened, but we ain't gonna talk about that. And I applied in like July, and I think I turned my application in like 2 days before the deadline or something. And then I got accepted. And in August of 2013, I came to Tucson, and life has not been the same ever since. But in all like the most wonderful ways. I have gone through an extraordinary transformation being here, and I am so grateful for all of the things that I have been able to learn, not only internally but externally. The community that I was able to create here, and then just really, I feel like I grew a lot into like myself, my personal powers. Like for those of you who are watching on YouTube, and then for those of you who may just be listening on the podcast, I'm currently hair curled, turtleneck on, lips popping. I have a beautiful red lipstick, and part of that coming into like my queer identity and really living authentically as the femme identified person as I always know that I have been, but never was like able to explore because I didn't have language around that. A lot of that transformation happened here in Tucson. So like I have a deep amount of gratitude for all of the things that I have learned here in Tucson. And also there's a lot of fucked up shit though that has happened along the way.
Which we will be getting into.
Yeah, so let's start with what it was like when you first arrived in Arizona.
So it was actually so fun when I first got here. So a little bit like of context about myself. So I'm an only, okay. I was raised as an only child. So I have siblings, but I was raised as an only child. I was raised in like a matriarchy, which is like really cool, but also complicated because even though I was raised by Black women, they still like had a whole bunch of fucking internalized misogyny, and that was confusing. And so I also, for those of you who are into astrology out there, I have 6 Capricorn placements. So like Capricorn is strong in my chart. So Saturn is out here, structure, being rigid, being like repressed, being, I was very, very limiting in the way that I functioned. Like the things that I was good at, I was good at. And I was like, why do I need to be good at other things? Because I'm good at the things that I'm good at. And moving away to Arizona, where like literally moving to a place where the only person who knew me was my cousin, I got to start over. And I got to, not that I was like running from anything or anything like that, but like I got to figure out who am I in a completely new context. And I allowed for myself to explore in ways that I don't think that I would have if I would have stayed in California. I was away from my family. I was away from all of the things that were really familiar to me. So I wasn't constantly putting myself into these roles that I had been used to. And I was able to really do stuff for myself. And that was something that I didn't feel like I had the freedom to do for a long time being in California. So it was really liberating. I explored and met new people and did new things. So it was wonderful. The first year at the University of Arizona really was whimsical in a lot of ways.
Sounds like a Netflix show that I'm ready to watch right the fuck now. So speaking of all of these people who you met, can you tell us a little bit about, I've never been to Arizona, neither has Akua. And for all of our listeners who have never been there, what was the demographic like of people, not only in Tucson, but also on the university in general? Because I know that can be like 2 different things.
Yeah, so that was like also complicated for me, right? So the University of Arizona is a PWI, it's predominantly white institution. I think we're at like 50% white people, and then like literally everyone else makes up like the other half of our population of students. So for me, moving from, I was like, oh, the Southwest, like it's gonna be a little different. And it wasn't. It was literally, it felt like it feels similar to demographic wise to me being in Glendora or like the LA surrounding area, because Glendora is in Los Angeles County. And so I was like, okay, it doesn't feel like I have shifted too much. I'm still dealing in spaces that are predominantly white. So for me, it wasn't like a huge culture shock. But that has been some of the things that other people have said is they'll come to the university coming from places like New York, and they're like, I'm so used to being around like black, or like there's all kinds of like BIPOC people, and then I came here and they're like, this is the most fucking white people I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, oh bitch, I grew up in a city that was literally like 89% white or something like that. So it's just Tuesday. But the Southwest, Tucson specifically, does have a high white population. And then the next highest demographic of folks is Latinx people. And then there are a lot of indigenous people here as well. So, and then being on campus, so it was really cool because there are all kinds of folks. There are a lot of international students from different places. There are a lot of APITA people. APITA is Asian Pacific Islander and Desi American. So that was really cool because I hadn't been able to share space with a lot of APITA people growing up in Glendora. There were like a handful of APITA folks that I like grew up with, but it was like literally them and like no one else, right? So that was really nice. Is the university does have, if you look for them, right? If you find folks, there are a lot of really great diverse people, but you have to like search for them. Like they're not readily available in the sense of you're just walking around and it's just like, oh, I see all different kinds of people, like you're walking around the university and it's just like, I'm in Glendora again.
Sure. Oh, cool, you're muted. You're still muted. Oh no.
I
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was. Okay. Technical difficulties. So it sounds like finding community was not, throwing a stone's rock. How did you find community in Arizona?
Yes. So sorry, I'm laughing because it's actually a funny story.
Oh, I thought that was like a trauma laugh.
No,
Oh.
it's a funny story.
Okay.
So I ended up working in African American student affairs. So my university is unique in the sense of we have cultural and resource centers based on identity, and each cultural resource center has their own space, which is not very common. A lot of times on university campuses, they'll have like a multicultural center, or they'll have like one space for one group of people, and then like everyone else shares like the other spaces. We have six. We have LGBTQ affairs, the Women and Genders Resources Center, APASA, which is Asian Pacific American Student Affairs, the Ana and Alberto Guerrero Center, which is for Latinx folks, NASA, which is Native American Student Affairs, and then ASA, which is African American Student Affairs, which is where I ended up working. So the way that I got my job, and then in turn ended up finding a rich African American community, or why am I saying African American? Black, I use the word Black. Finding a rich Black community, and then also working with all of the other cultural center spaces. It started out with an angry email that I said.
Love that energy.
So my cousin and I, we went to so we have community councils. So the African American Community Council, they host a dinner where they give away, and then they give away money, they give away computers. They do and then do speed dating, but like to get you connected to like resources of the community. So the event, yes. The event was interesting, and it was like, yeah, the event was, it doesn't approach Blackness in a way that is like very nuanced, and it felt very full of stereotypes. And so that pissed me off because I
You
was
got to
just
get
like,
into what the.
okay, so like it was like, oh yeah, we're gonna, because they were like, oh yeah, we want to welcome you to the campus, and so we want you all to know we want to have foods that are familiar to
Oh
you, and so
no.
they're like, so yes.
That's
So they're
exactly
like,
what I thought, and
so
I didn't want to say
yes,
anything.
yes. So they're like, so that's why we had a barbecue, and then we go, and we had peach cobbler for dessert, and I was just like, I was
Yikes,
like,
yikes, 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 yikes.
yeah, and it wasn't even, and then it was done by like the schools catering, and the food was trash. So it's not even like good food. So on top of it being offensive, it also wasn't delicious, right? And there is good food in Tucson. And so there are good Black people who cook delicious soul food, right? So I wrote, so they gave us a feedback form, and I wrote my feedback, and I was just like, hi, I'm new, and I feel like that this thing was very stereotypical, and I didn't like that because Blackness is like expensive. And I think that there's a better way for us to be able to do this that isn't relying so heavily on like niggas eat. Like, I didn't say that, but like, but like that, like niggas like barbecue, right?
Yeah.
And like pussy popping music, which is fine. Like, I don't have any problem with that. But it was the framing of this is how we're gonna come together. And so I left, usually we leave those things anonymously, but I was so hot about this. I was like, you can contact me for further discussion at this email. And so I didn't think that I was going to get an email back. And then I did. And so I got an email from Matisse Moore, who is the former director of African American Student Affairs. Shout out to Matisse. They responded, and they were like, yeah, I want to talk more to you about this. And that started a beautiful journey, a beautiful mentorship, and then also me working for African American Student Affairs, and then kind of unpacking my internalized anti-Blackness, exploring my queer identity, finding Black feminism, which then led to me becoming a gender women studies major. So it was like this very pivotal moment that led to so many other things.
That is a beautiful story. It started out with some dry ass barbecue chicken, and then it just grew into a very well lubricated community finding experience.
Yes.
That's really dope. I guess what would so like you were introduced to this community via your mentor at your university and stuff like that. What did it look like interacting with other Black folks and other POCs off campus?
Um, I didn't for a long time, actually. So I was really invested in doing stuff on campus. And then at the time, so my first year, I lived on campus. So then that was like a piece of why I didn't really do a lot of stuff off campus, because I lived on campus. And then my second year, I lived off campus, but I was just at school all the time. So that happened. Oh no, I did my so I was still doing a lot of stuff, but just with people through the various cultural centers. So I was like really involved doing those things. Um and then yeah, I didn't actually start doing I would do stuff like here and there off campus every now and then. And if I would see something, or like my them tour would be like, oh, this event is happening that's being hosted by other people outside of like the academy, because they were also really intentional about bringing in grassroots people, bringing in folks who did things kind of outside, and they were always like, how do we think of Blackness expansively, and how do we make sure that that Blackness includes queerness, it includes transness, it includes people who aren't in academia, who are also still doing cool shit and have a lot of wisdom and knowledge. So they were always like, oh, someone in the community is doing this thing. I think that you'd be interested in it, or I think that you would really benefit, and this will help you grow as a person. So that's kind of how I started doing things outside of the academy, and getting introduced to folks who did things in the community. But it really wouldn't be until I dropped out of school that I really then was heavily involved in the community. And then that kind of was like the next phase in the transformation of how I got to like where I am now. But for the first like 2 to 3 years, I was really just doing stuff on campus with all of the various centers and the different people.
I like how the community organizing becomes a whole different chapter in your life, because it's actually the question that we wrote right before we put in a break. Is the conversation in this episode so far resonating with you? Is it helping you learn some new shit, or helping you unlearn some old shit, or just allowing you to have a good, relatable ass time? The people out there in podcast land are saying that it is, and we love to hear that. We would also love for you to support the continuation of conversations like these. If you're listening to us on a podcast app, you can take a moment to subscribe to us or drop 5 stars and leave a rating for the homies. That's us. And if you got some little extra change, you can drop some cash on our PayPal by going to paypal.me/innerho, or you can come join our Patreon community and access our chat and virtual events for as low as $2 a month by going to patreon.com/innerho uprising, or you can just hit up your friend and say, yo, listen to this podcast. It's a very good podcast. We thank and love you all for your continued support, homies. All right, we're back with Karlyn, and Akua's got a question.
Oh, there we go. I have issues like unmuting myself today. I don't know why. But yeah, so you're talking about this next phase. What does organizing work look like for in Arizona, both in your academic space and then I guess in the general populace and community? If you do both.
So I do more community organizing now, less on campus stuff, like, well, obviously, because like campus is like mostly closed. But I also moved away from doing campus organizing because of like what happened after I dropped out. But Tucson is like there is like a very strong organizing community. There are a lot of coalitions that are built on stuff. Some of the particular I almost said episodes. Some of the particular issues that are organized around include undocumented folks, because we are a borderland. There's a strong Black Lives Matter chapter here, which I'm actually a part of. There are issues around wages. We have a strong union here, actually, even though Arizona is a right to work state. So workers' rights are like a huge thing, because we have a high poverty rate here in Tucson as well. So those are some of the things that folks are usually organizing around, racial justice, access to reproductive health, because I think we have like a strong Planned Parenthood presence here as well. And I feel like there's only like 1 or 2 Planned Parenthoods, like maybe in the Southwest, and they might be in Tucson. So there's all kinds of stuff that folks are doing here in Tucson. And then also in the state throughout, because I work for an org that is a statewide organization, that's a student advocacy organization, but we have become much more intersectional because like there are all kinds of students. So we have to be aware of all of the different ways that Arizona policy impacts those people, because Arizona is a place where a lot of really harsh policies for all kinds of things is tested out. So particularly with undocumented folks and migrants, Arizona has been created to be the state to funnel people in. Our Sonoran Desert has been used as the death by deterrence method that we have switched to in our immigration policies. So there's a lot of like immigrant rights here. So all kinds of stuff. And I feel blessed because there have just been so many different people that I've been able to learn from and be in community with. So I feel like I have a really robust understanding of things, largely because I've been able to organize with like the people and follow the lead of the folks who are experiencing these things. I mean, one of those being, there's a huge Indigenous presence here in Arizona, and learning from Indigenous people about some of their practices, learning about like what sovereignty means to them, because it means different things to different Indigenous people, how they move through what community means, and what does like land recognition mean, and what does like even giving the land back to people, like to Indigenous folks mean for different folks, has been amazing to do and learn from. So yeah, there's all kinds of really cool shit happening here. The challenge is, though, is sometimes holding space for all of those things, because at times it can feel like those things are conflicting with one another. And in some ways they can be, depending on like what your praxis and analysis is. And so that was one of the things that was really challenging. I think that's one of the things that's just challenging about organizing in general, but that has been really taxing here in Tucson. Is I'm a Black queer person, so like my ideology is rooted in Black feminist thought. I'm a Black intersectional feminist. I'm always like, okay, how does this thing interact with this other thing, and then how is this power thing telling us that this is right and this is wrong, or how does this impact that, and how do we move this thing while also keeping this other thing in mind? And a lot of people, being an intersectional feminist is hard. It's not easy. It's not fun. And so, organizing has been challenging, and I have a reputation, sometimes good and sometimes bad. And my willingness to call and name when we're doing fucked up things, regardless of who you are. I don't care if you're a white person. I don't care if you're a Black person. I don't care if you're queer. I don't care if you're trans. If you're doing something that's harmful, I name it, and that has gotten me into some trouble. So the Black Student Union on my campus, we recorded a video, and then at the time, the president, who was a white woman, Ann Weaver Hart, she like came out and like marched with us, and then was like, oh, just want to let y'all know that like the campus is here for you or whatever. And so me being my brilliant political strategist self, I was like, this is an opportunity for us to get more from our university than lip service.
Yeah.
So we had a horrible meeting with the president. She microaggressed the dean of students. She was really dismissive of us. And so what we ended up doing as students, we worked together in the various cultural and resource centers, if y'all remember at the beginning of the episode I had described. And a group of us wrote the list of demands, and we called ourselves the Marginalized Students of the University of Arizona. And we were cross-campus, multicultural, multiracial coalition of students. And that was a wonderful and also awful experience at the same time. Looking back on some of the things, there are a lot of things that I would have done differently, but it was a really powerful moment. We wrote a 19-page of demands that is still being used today to influence not only new movement, but also it guided the university to shift some of the ways that it talked about things, which is what we wanted to do. But yeah, that was really, organizing is exhausting, and it was taking a mental and emotional toll on me. I was also having like a volatile relationship with one of my friends, and it was and I also internalized a lot of things because I felt responsible for this group of students that I was bringing together, because I knew like what the ramifications for us could be. And I was like, am I doing the right thing? Because like we're marginalized people, like explicitly fighting our school. We're putting ourselves in danger. Like there are some folks who are going to graduate soon. What the fuck is going to happen to them? And then with, the political climate changing as it has in our country, Tucson's not that big. I was like, if people wanted to like kill us or beat our asses, like it wouldn't be hard for people to find us if they wanted to. So I was like really stressed the fuck out about those things. And I felt personally responsible, even though folks, consented to doing this work. If you remember again, Capricorn placements. So I was like, I am responsible for these people, and if bad things happen to them, it's my fault. And so that did not help with my ability to focus. I was very anxious. all the time. I also overextended myself. So I ended up having to, and also I didn't have money. And so that was the other thing, is I was always stressed the fuck out about money, because I was paying out of state tuition at the time.
Mm.
So I finished my spring 2015 semester and then was not able to return. Oh, I'm sorry, I finished my fall 2015 semester, wasn't able to return in spring of 2016. Still was helping with organizing though. We released the list of demands. The way we did it was really cool. We were super messy about it. So I had a lot of administrators' emails. And so I was like, we're going to email these to people. And I was like, we're going to send. And so because we had a meeting with the president, we had her personal email. So I was like, we're going to send this email to the president, and I'm going to blind carbon copy every single person that's an administrator whose email I have, so they don't know who got it. And so I was like, so this will create, I was like, we have to distract them. We have to create a frenzy. And then we were like, and we're going to try to simultaneously release the list of demands of all the listservs that all of us have access to, so it gets out to as many people as possible. So that was pretty fucking cool, how we did that. And it worked.
That's badass. Once again, this is a Netflix series that I would like love to watch, to be honest. If you actually have said this, then don't repeat it. I'll just kind of stitch it together in editing. But what were some of the demands?
So a lot of them were like super practical things, right? Like we weren't asking for outrageous shit. And the people who responded negatively was like, we're not asking for outrageous things. So like we asked for more adequate space for cultural and resource centers, because a lot of the spaces, so like for example, ASA was in the space where ASA is housed was a former fraternity house, but it hadn't been updated since like the 90s, I think. So like there were things that needed to be updated. NASA and APASA still currently share a floor of the Dean of Students building. So there's not enough space for, like, they share a very small space. So we're like, we need more like adequate, thoughtful, intentional space for the resource centers. The resource centers, their staffing had been cut over the years. So we're like, we need money. We need for you to fund staff so that the centers can actually function in the way that they're supposed to. We want mental health services, but we want mental health services for people that actually match the identities of the folks that you're helping, because we do have campus. We have CAPS, which is counseling and psychological services, but like CAPS is overworked, and then most of the people who work in CAPS are white. So like we had stories of students going to CAPS and being gaslit by people because the provider has no analysis on race. So we're like, we need for people who look like us to also be offering us psychological services. We asked for, then some of the demands were like more specific to like issues facing the group who wrote that demand. So like, for example, FORCE, which is a part of our, the WGRC, which is the Women and Genders Resources Center, they were like, we, want free tampons for everybody on campus because people with uteruses need tampons, and they should just be free and they should be available everywhere. So like, and then, LGBTQ affairs was like gender neutral bathrooms should just be a thing on campus everywhere. So like it was, and there was like free STI testing. So like things that were tied to the identities of the folks that would be beneficial though for everyone on campus. So yeah, we weren't asking for outrageous shit.
It just sounds like you asked for a decent school environment.
How dare you ask for a decent school environment?
Tampons, nigga, what the fuck?
Space? You want to congregate?
Like STI testing is just like so duh. That is so duh on a campus environment. Like let's
and free, because they're like, well, you could bursar it. No, bitch, because if I can't pay my bursar off at the end of the semester, I can't fucking register for class. So free.
Ooh, child. Well, I'm very glad that you all did this work. That is like so cool. I'm dead ass when I'm like, where's the Netflix? Where's the
Where's the movie on?
So as you know, you dropped out, and I assume
Yes,
that you interacted more with Arizona at large when you were not on the campus space,
yes.
as you said. What has your lived experience been as a Black fat femme in Arizona?
Yeah, so once I dropped out of school, I had a lot more free time. So then I was like, okay, cool. I could like try to date and like have sex and shit because I'm not fucking anxious all the time. That has been a
Oh
mess.
no.
It has been a mess, and it has. I don't want to say gotten worse, but it has shifted to me finding more layers to the fuckery that is being a Black fat femme in Arizona. So one of the things is a lot of people are a lot of people are fat phobic, right? And so like I'm like, even some of you listening to this show, you're probably fat phobic,
Ooh,
because
drag
we
them
live in a
one time for the
society.
one time.
We live in a society that teaches us not only to be fat phobic, but that fat phobia is an acceptable form of hatred. Many folks and a lot of people code their fat phobia in various ways. And so like as so I wasn't always a fat person. Um, I've always been a big person, or I've always been a person that was bigger than like everyone else, which is different though than being like embodying like having a fat body. And I want to be clear about that. And so as I moved from having just kind of being like, oh, I'm bigger than everybody because I'm taller and I'm not white thin, and to being like, I'm fat, people have also interacted with me differently. And one of the things that has happened is a lot of folks um, will say that they're not interested in fat people by saying, using coded language, like by saying things in their profiles like, it's like whenever I see someone who says like, I like hiking and I like going outside, I'm like, you're fat phobic. Like, I'm like, I feel like this is a way for you to signal that you don't want to, that you're not interested in fat people because you think that fat people don't do those things. I'm like, me and one of my friends, we go hiking. We've been going hiking once a week. So like, you tried it, bitch. But like, it's like using things like that, or people will say, I'm only interested in fit people, but that I'm like, that's vague because I'm like, I'm flexible. I can do splits, bitch. Like, I literally used to dance in high school, can still do a pirouette. So, like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? And I'm like, I know what you mean by that. You mean you're looking for people who look a particular way. You're not actually thinking about like athleticism. Um, so that has been a thing. And
Can
then
I
there's also,
interject really quickly?
yeah.
Just because, as you dragged us, I was one of those people. I struggle with my own internalized fat phobia, and I feel like I've said that on this show. And that example about people who write in their bios, I like hiking.
Mhm.
And I don't want you to like, do that labor and kind of clarifying that for me, but I do want to
Mhm.
learn in
Yeah.
real time. I feel like
Yeah.
for me, if someone said, oh, I'm looking for energetic, sporty, active people, that would be coded,
Mhm.
but stating the hobby that you like, how
Yeah.
could they phrase that
So
differently?
I feel like the context also matters too, right? So like for me, if I see someone who is in most of their pictures shirtless, or like if all of their pictures are like them being outdoors and like they are like a thin person and they're like, I like hiking. I'm like, yes, you probably do actually like hiking. And you also probably are still fat phobic though,
Uh-huh.
right? And so for me, it's the context that matters,
Okay.
right? And I could be, and I'll admit, I could be projecting. Like that person might not be fat phobic, but I have not had the luxury though of most people being thoughtful about how they think about fatness. So I err on the side of like, well, because fat phobia is the default, more often than not, folks are probably being fat phobic. And I think that one of the things that I will say before somebody gets defensive while they're listening and is arguing with me in their head while they're washing their dishes, because I be doing that shit too, is that you may not even recognize, or like you might not be intentional about it, right? Like there are some ways that folks and that's the thing that is like hard to unpack about so much of the violence that we experience and act out on one another. Is most of the time we we learn these things when we're younger and then normalize them and then get to a place where we don't even recognize that those are the things that we're doing, but we're doing it. And fat phobia is one of those things. We learn from a young age what types of bodies are and are not acceptable. And we learn the myriad of ways to describe them without ever having to utter the word fat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens a lot of times, right? Is that people will signal that these are like that. I don't want fat people because I assume a fat person won't be able to go hiking. I assume a fat person can't be energetic. I assume a fat person can't be athletic. So, right there, so that's kind of like how I'm coming to that conclusion. Is it's the implications that are built into what is being stated.
I have like a
Thank
hippy
you.
dippy. Yeah, I appreciate you clarifying that. I have a
Yes.
hippy dippy pie in the sky kind of question, and it's
Yeah.
like, I think because like fat phobia is the standard, right? Like how racism is the standard and trans misogyny is
Yes.
the standard and transphobia is the standard
Yes.
and all that kind of stuff. If you are someone who both acknowledges that you like to do these all kinds of energetic things or whatever, and you are also someone who acknowledges that these things are often tied to coded words related to fat phobia and even ableism, should you then like would it be weird to see someone in their profile be like, I love all bodies or like something like
No,
that?
it wouldn't. There are ways that folks signal those things too, right? Where folks will say, I don't have age or like race hangups, right? Because they recognize that those are things that like people are engaging and having to navigate. So no, it wouldn't be weird if someone was like, all body types welcome. Like, and it sounds like it sounds kind of like a gross thing to say, but I feel like if I saw that, I'd be like, cool. So I, at the very least, know that this person is engaging at some level with like the things that I have to experience and navigate, like as a fat person.
Yeah, it seems
So
like in a
no.
world of
So
no.
I
Yeah, but
personally would say that I don't have a problem with that. I don't know how other folks feel
mhm.
about that, but for me, I'd be like, thank God, like someone is actually thinking about bodies and not being like one dimensional about it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then some of the weird shit that has happened to me that I've had to like move through is on the other, for me, on the other side of like just explicitly being like, I hate people with fat bodies, is like people who like fetishize fat bodies. And there's like a particular way that like I think Black fat bodies are fetishized. So like a lot of people, when they have approached me, have been like, oh, do you have a fat ass though, right? Like associating like me being fat with like me being like, oh, because you're Black and that means that you're gonna be curvy and you're gonna have a big old fat ass. And I'm like, I have a humble booty. So I do not have a fat bubble butt. Like it's just a regular booty. It is not video vixen bouncing up and down, right? And like there's and that is associated though, that's like an intersection of like anti-Blackness and fat phobia, where people are like, oh, Black people have a particular type of body. And then like people are upset when I'm like, no, here's my nude and my booty is regular. Because that's not the shape of my body. I have an apple shaped body. So most of my fat deposit is like at my lower is like in my lower stomach. And then everything else kind of stays mostly regular. It doesn't go to my ass or my thighs. So yeah, so there has been that where folks have will fetishize fat bodies. And I'm like, I don't like this either because it's still dehumanizing. You're still not seeing me holistically, and I don't like it. And then one of the other things that has been really like odd to navigate has been that I like now have to deal with more is like the femme phobia that exists. So like I've always known, so before I was like outwardly femme presenting, folks would be like, you know, no fats, no femmes, no blacks. But then I was like, okay, cool. Well, I don't look femme. So then like that wasn't necessarily a barrier for folks like engaging with me. But then but then I would sometimes figure out like, okay, how do I still feel comfortable or not with like how this person is engaging with me? And I'm like, I feel like if I have sex with this person, it wouldn't be enjoyable because even through our like interaction, they feel like they have ideas about femme people and I don't want to deal with that. And then now that I'm outwardly femme presenting on all of my things, a lot of folks um, ignore ignore what femme means and think that it automatically means that I'm a trans woman, which I'm not. So like, and that's like, just to be clear with folks who are also listening to this episode, I'm not a trans woman. I'm a femme identified person. And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with being a trans woman. I just don't identify as a woman. I'm a femme identified person. That is like my gender identity and my gender expression is femme. But people are like, oh, trans. Oh, okay, you're a trans woman. And I'm like, but I'm not. I'm not a trans woman though. And so there's like that interaction, and there's someone who like misgendered me and was like had messaged me and they were just like, oh, I'm looking for a girl like you. And I was like, I don't use my pronouns are literally in my fucking profile. I don't use girl. I'm not a woman. What? And just I was like, this is weird. I don't like that. So that has happened. And there's also people who will think of femme and think femme means like submissive, but like submissive in like not in like the way that again like y'all have explored on IHU, where there was someone who came and they talked about what does it mean to be a sub, like not like that, like they think like they have like very binary, oh, okay, I'm dom masculine, and that means that I'm just gonna come and like fuck you in the ass and like you're just gonna like it. And I'm like, no, that's not, that's not what femme means. Femme does not mean submissive. Femme literally just means femme. It just literally means like a certain way of expressing your gender, but has nothing to do with like the types of qualities that you have, because there are definitely like femme dom tops. And so that has been strange too, of seeing how people have their ideas of masculinity and femininity really rooted in like toxic masculinity and these binaries, and they try to fit me into these things, and I'm like, that's not what that means for me. Just because I'm femme doesn't mean that we are not going to negotiate the types of things that are going to happen to me. It does not mean that I do not also expect reciprocity to happen. So a lot of people are like, oh, because you're femme, I just want to come and like fuck you, and you're not, and nothing is going to happen to you. Like, I'm not going to eat your ass. I'm not going to make out with you. I'm not going to slop oral. Like, there is no expectation of pleasure to happen to me. And I think a lot of people think that simply because I'm femme that I'm supposed to not expect pleasure, which has been, it's like wild to think about. But then when I have a friend who she and I talk a lot about it, and she's just like, oh no, she's like, yeah, as a woman, like she's like, this is the kind of shit that like, she's like, men expect all of this. She's like, yes, they expect for you to not orgasm. They expect, she's like, they basically, a lot of men just look at you probably now because you are femme presenting. She's like, they're reading you as a woman and they expect for you to not be pleasured because that's what they have been taught. And I was just like, I'm like, but I like pleasure. I'm like, I want to come too. Like, and so it has been, it's been interesting to navigate. There have been people who I've had fun experiences with, but like, I haven't, I think that I have orgasmed with like a handful of folks. So like one of the things that happens is like I don't come because I usually don't feel comfortable. Just because like if you're having sex with someone for the first time, you're just like, okay, like, and I'm like, that was fun. And then I don't know if people feel disappointed because like so many folks, they wrap up their ideas in like hooking up or having sex with people with having to orgasm. But I'm like, no, I had a good time. Like I had fun. I had fun because we communicated with each other. I had fun because, you know, you licked my booty hole and I saw God. Like, it was a good time for me, right? And so I have these experiences where I'm like, I've had good times with people, but then those folks, because I didn't come, I don't know if they feel like they weren't, you know, they wasn't man enough or whatever. And then like they ghost me and I'm like, cool, but I still had a good time and I will still like hold this as one of a good sexual experience that I had. But it would be nice if folks approached me like a human and didn't have all of these just weird hangups around fatness and femme people. And I actually got to this place where I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna like explicitly in my profile say that I'm a fat person, because what was happening before is folks I would still put like pictures of like full body pictures of myself. So I'm like, you can see, you can see that I'm not skinny. Like I am not a small person. And then people would still see my nudes and then block me. And I'm just like, okay, so like you thought that I looked different, maybe. So I was just like, I'm fat. Like, and if you don't fuck with that, like you've been warned, you know. So if you're interacting with me, you know that you're interacting with a fat person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want to get even more into this, but we're gonna take another break. But this has been great. So here's this. Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Maybe it is, I don't know, the crushing weight of bigotry in these here United States. Maybe it's specifically in the southwestern United States. We don't know. I know for me, the crushing weight of bigotry does help prevent me from achieving my goals sometimes. And something that really helps is my favorite online therapy service, BetterHelp. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. Plus, you can start communicating in under 48 hours. It's not a crisis line, it's not self help, it's professional counseling done securely online. There is a broad range of expertise available, which may not be locally available in many areas, and the service is available for clients worldwide. You can log into your account at any time and send a message to your counselor. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so you won't ever have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room as with traditional therapy. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today, as do we here at the Uprising. You can visit their website and read their testimonials that are posted daily. And you can visit betterhelp.com/IHU. That's better HELP, and join the over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they are recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Uprising listeners, that's y'all, get 10% off their first month by going to betterhelp.com/IHU. That's better HELP.com/IHU. Now let's get back to the S-dub, to the AZ. Cool, you had a question?
Yes. So I wanted to add something in as you're talking about yourself as a Black queer femme. I want to be transparent that I remember reading your bio and I was like, how are they femme, but their pronouns are he and they? And like there was just this blind spot in my mind. But of course I moved past that. So, you know, that's it. I'm going, you know, I'm moving forward. That's who you are. And then as you're talking, I feel like I know that male femme people exist. Like it's not like it's not a new concept to me. So the fact that there was just this blind spot, and then as you're talking, it just like clicked, and I was like, oh yeah, like like there was just this explosion in my brain that was like, aha, here was that blind spot. It, you know, exposed. So I wanted to, you know, be transparent in that. we all have blind spots sometimes. It was like just a lapse in memory. Like, yes, people exist.
Well, and so I thank you for that, Akua. I appreciate that. And I will say though that for me, the he in my pronouns is less of like, because I feel the he, and more of like, he is like familiar, if that makes sense. So like the they them is more like, is what feels more at home for me. The he him is like, well, I grew up being called he, and I grew up being referred to this way. And there are some people who like this is also like familiar for them, and like how do I create space for that? So like for example, I went to visit. I went to Texas for 2 months, and both of my parents live in Texas, and so I was visiting my dad and spending time with him. And so this was the first time that I had seen him as like fully femme presenting. And so he calls me like son and bud and like yeah, so like he does like gendered things like that to me, but it doesn't feel weird because I'm just like, my dad has been like saying these things to me like forever. So it's less for me in the sense of like when people that I don't know call me like him, I'm like, I like cringe because I'm like, who are they talking about? Um, but more for holding space for the familiarity that does exist for me, because there are people who do care about me, who've known me my whole life, and that is like how they have known me as like he, while also still while also still they acknowledge that like I have been queer. They're like, we've known that you've been queer for forever. Oh, pardon me. We know that you have, they're like, okay, you femme now, whatever, like we good. And like they don't, like it doesn't bother them. It's kind of like holding space for that. And I think that as time goes on, I will move away from using him, and then exclusively use they them. But for now, it's also like for me too, because like part of fully coming into and living out and recognizing my femme identity, it's a process. And everyone's process is different. And for me, I am still like, he, him feels familiar. Even though it doesn't feel right, it still feels familiar. So like that is what it is for me. And I less and less I'm attached to it, and one day I'll be able to fully go by they them, but for now it is like holding space for like that transition that is happening.
Thank you for adding that and sharing that. You also went on to talk about some very weird interactions with folks. What is your weirdest hotel?
Hmm. What is my weirdest hotel? I have a weird hotel that's like not related to being in the Southwest. So I'll share that one. And then I'm trying to think, because I don't let a lot of weird stuff happen to me because I've heard of like other shit that's happened to other people. And so I have like very good rules around like who I will and will not like interact with. So like a weird hotel. So I have two actually. One time when I was back in California, I climbed through a window to have sex with someone, but then I ended up not even having sex with them because it was just too much. So like I literally climbed in a window at nighttime. like,
This is what I'm talking about, the Netflix shit. This is the Netflix shit that I
I
referred
dead
to.
ass was like, this is a horrible idea. I'm black as fuck. Like I should not be climbing through people's windows at night. Like, what am I doing? Um, oh wait, no, so that one, okay, actually I have a few now, but like none of them are Arizona. They're all California. This other time, and so I think my cousin and I had talked to each other and we think that we had sex with the same guy. It's so because I was telling him my story, and he was just like, so I hooked up with this guy. I had sex with him in his garage on the floor. Not one of my proudest moments, because he was like, oh yeah. But like it wasn't even like his garage. Like he lived in a condo. And so he like shared a garage with like his neighbor. And he's like, yeah, I can't. He was like, yeah, sorry that we have to like have sex in the garage, but I have my son this weekend, and this is the only place that I can like have privacy, but like not really, because hopefully my neighbor doesn't like open the fucking garage while we're having sex. So, like I literally had sex with someone on the floor in the garage, and I was just like, damn, I really did that. And
like
so
that.
I told my cousin, and my cousin was just like, bitch. Because he was like, I think we fucked the same person. And he was like, I'm pretty sure that he told me the same story. And I was just like, either this dude is a fucking liar or has like a wife or something. Because how is it?
Why is it always in the garage?
Both? I was just like, yeah, not my proudest moment. But the sex is good, so whatever. And then one of my other strange hotels is, so I didn't bottom. So like I didn't have like penetrative sex until I was like 20 something. So like I lost my virginity in Tucson, and the guy that I had sex with, I don't even know who he was. I just know that he was like some light skinned guy in the army. So shout out to you if you're listening. The dick was good. So I had like put him in, because he like gave me his number. He was just like, we should like link up again or whatever. And so I like saved his number in my phone as like sexy army guy. Because one of the other things that like people are weird about, and I remember the reason why I didn't tell him I had never had penetrative sex before was because of a conversation that I had with someone else who was like, yeah, I don't like having sex with people when they're virgins, because they were like, I don't like the responsibility of that. And I was like, that's a really fucking weird way to frame that. And so like that stuck with me. And I was like, I don't want people thinking like they have some weird responsibility or like pressure because I've never had penetrative sex before, because I had done a lot to prepare for it. Like I had done research, and I had practice, and I had gotten like comfortable with like my sexuality. And I was like, okay, like how am I gonna like negotiate this? How am I gonna be able to express like, oh, actually I need more lube, or that does feel good, or that doesn't, to make sure like I was prepared, because I was like, look, ain't nobody about to tear my booty hole up. So it was fine. But I was just like, I'm just not gonna tell him, because I don't want it to be like this weird. I don't want it to be a weird thing, because it's not a weird thing for me. So I don't want to make it a weird thing for him. But shout out to Sexy Army Guy. The dick was good. My number's still the same.
Shout out. Shout out to Sexy Army Guy. So first of all, the garage thing, like it be happening like that sometimes. I fucked in some weird places, like on a deflated fucking air mattress, and like the apartment of somebody's apartment, like nobody owned that apartment. It's been a time. But what has been your steamiest hotel, or some of your steamiest, like some of the best?
My steamiest. So I feel like some of my best interactions were just because like the experience was good. So like there was someone who I had sex with in one of the residence halls on campus, and like that was just really good because he was just like very communicative and like super reciprocal in everything, which I love reciprocity. And he was great at eating ass, because everyone is not good at that, but I saw Jesus. Like, I'm telling you, like, Ariana Grande is wrong. God is not a woman, but God does exist because I saw them. So that was fun. One of my most recent experiences was actually really good, just because like the person who was topping me wasn't necessary, was like not super like, I just want to like put my dick inside of you. They were like, they fingered me for a long time, which was amazing. And so like I had fun because my prostate was like, ah. And so I was just like, yes, we could just do this forever. So like that was fun because it wasn't, because like he was actually interested and was like turned on by like me moaning and groaning and seeing God again. And so like that was the nice experience. I'm trying to think of, those are the two that like immediately come to my mind. And then I just had like, not odd, but just like things, all of my sexual experiences. And I think that it's really funny how sex happens in like real life versus like how it's like portrayed to us. Like sex is really fucking awkward more often than not. And a lot of my sexual experiences have included like really goofy things, and just like really like just funny, cute moments where I'm just like, that was very like real life. And it wasn't, I was like, this is very like not how porn portrays sex. Like porn is purely a fantasy because that does not happen in real life. Like it's awkward, it's clunky, it's like it's goofy sometimes. And so there have been like a lot of like fun, goofy moments that I have had with folks, or where you're just like talking about like random stuff. Like I remember there's this one guy that I had sex with, and I kept laughing because he was like, I want you to spit on my dick. I want you to be nasty. And I was like, I don't feel comfortable spitting on your dick though. And he was just, I was like, that's not who I am. I'm not that person. And it's like, when I want you to be that person, he was like, let go. It's fine. I want you to be nasty. Just go ahead, spit on it. And I was like, I don't think I could do that. So like, I didn't spit on his dick because I didn't. I was like, I don't, that's no. I was like, that's too freaky for me. So I'm like, I just felt like.
I actually, here's another secret. I actually find spitting on dick awkward. I can't do it. I just can't. Yeah. I can't do it. I'm sorry. I don't think I ever the act of spitting. All right, yeah. I'm just gonna leave it there. I can't do it either.
I didn't. He was like, come on, it'll be fine. And I was like, I feel like you'll judge me, and I'll also judge myself. And I was just like, I don't think it's not gonna happen. I was like, I don't feel comfortable spitting on your dick. And he was like, okay, fine. But he was really nice about it. And we had sex like 2 or 3 times. And then like each time he was just like, he's like, you can let go, let loose. He's like, I want you to be wild. I was like, I'm not that wild. I was like, yeah, I'm not spitting on your dick. That's not what happened.
Is that when you were is that when you were openly presenting as femme?
No, that was before I was femme presenting.
Okay.
That he was like, spit on my dick. And then, but the when I saw God again, that was recent.
Okay.
And me being femme presenting, and that was recent.
I was just trying to make a correlation that might not exist about men wanting to like aggressively spit on dicks, but
yeah,
it's across the board.
But I also I'm really good though about, because like there are things that I don't like. So, like I hate when people like try to like push your head down on their. I'm like, don't do that. Yeah. I will throw up on you. Happened once. I almost threw up on someone because my gag reflex is
it be there.
It's my gag reflex is like, bitch, we're saving your life.
It be protecting you.
We don't care. We are keeping you safe.
Intruder alert.
So yeah, he tried it, and I was like, yeah, no, don't do that. So I had to like ease into it. And then like desensitize it over time so my body knows I'm not in danger. And so yeah, I hate that, but I'm really good at like when people try to push my head down, I'm like the next stop is good. The moving the hand away is good. Which is another reason why when people think that I'm, femme means just passive, it doesn't. I will move your hand. I will tell you to stop.
So we've gotten into some of these hotels, but I'm a romantic, so I got to know, what are these dates like? Like, are they just like picnics in the desert? I just think of Arizona as the desert. So like, enlighten me into what y'all be doing, even if it is a picnic
Yeah.
in the desert, which might be cold or really hot.
So there's like a lot of cute hiking trails here, so people can go hiking. I've never been on a hiking date before. I have been on dates with folks, like I've gone out to eat before. So there was this one time that I met up with someone and we met in downtown at this cute, when we could go outside, at this cute little what was it? Like this like sausage place or something. And they had like beer and like bratwurst and things like that. So those are some of the things. We have movie theaters and we have regular shit too. We have movie theaters. We do have a lot of beautiful nature places that folks can go. I'm a fan of like if I feel comfortable with someone. So there was someone who they came over to my house and we like sat down and like chatted and had like a glass of wine. So like for me, I'm very much like I love intimate space with people. Like so like I like situations where intimacy can be created. So like I'm a fan of that. So, like I would not be like a movie, like I'm like, let's go to the no, I don't want to go to the movies because I can't talk to you. Let's go somewhere where like you won't be that distracted and we'll be able to have a conversation with one another. And usually though, and I'm really bad at this, is like if I feel like someone said something, I'm just like, ooh, you don't understand, this is the way that I need for you to, I'm gonna not talk to you anymore. So like, and particularly because there are Black people in Tucson. There's a myth that there are no Black people here. There are. But like, because the Black community here is so small though, because anti-Blackness is so prevalent, I don't fuck around with like, if you are anti-Black, if you're fat phobic, if you are classist, if you are misogynist, like I'm not gonna be like, oh, I'll give you a chance. Like, nah, niggas, like I will laugh through this date and then I will ghost your ass because it's dangerous to have those kinds of people in your space. And because I am a community organizer, because I actually have like an intersectional feminist praxis, there are a lot of people that like just like are not dateable for me because their politics are fucked. And like that is part of the danger, like I'm not like you're gonna die danger, but like danger as in consequence of having a feminist praxis and not just like being a feminist when it's convenient. Is there are people that you might be like, ooh, you're really nice, and the booty hole game, you eat ass like a Nicki Minaj song, but like you're a fucking racist, or you're anti-Black, or you're a misogynist, or you hate undocumented people, so you're xenophobic, and like I cannot, I can't date you.
It makes
like,
the booty eating a lot less fun.
Because then all I think about is like,
There's a racist eating my ass.
What else are you using that mouth for? And it's xenophobia, right? So it literally kills the mood for me because all I can see is you being a misogynist or racist, or like I can't see anything else. I know that's not true for other people. Some people, they're just like, I don't care. I'm not one of those people. I care, and it literally fucks it up for me.
Yeah. It's lonely at the top. That's kind of how it feels like when you've reached peak consciousness. It's like, damn, ignorance is bliss. Fuck.
So let's say you are dating someone who is not all of these things comfortable, you're comfortable having them in your space. You know, you invite them over. We know you like to be cooking and eating. So
Yes.
Yes.
what is a cute or your go-to whole meal to cook for someone? And I'll give you context for a whole meal. I had to like really conceptualize this, but really what I mean by a whole meal is the meal you cook to seduce. The meal you
Mhm.
cook to get them, you know, the tryptophans and all the things together. Like, and I know mine because I do it all the time, but
Ooh.
what's
I
yours?
don't know. That's a good question. Because I've never cooked a whole meal because I usually buy them. So I'm like, what can I eat so that I can still, get my backbone out later? Um, but if I'm just seducing you, just like pull you in, to come like tomorrow and blow my back out later, um, it would definitely be some type of comfort. Like all the food I cook is comfort food. So it's like um mac and cheese. I'll make you some mac and cheese. I know my cousin's gonna clown me about that because we had a mac and cheese fiasco once. One time I fucked up my mac and cheese once, and they will not let that go. But my mac and cheese is delicious, so I would cook you my mac and cheese. I recently made a pot pie from scratch, so like I might make you a pot pie. I might make you, depending on, are we having a breakfast date? If it's a breakfast date, I might make you some biscuits and gravy. Like you're gonna be comfortable.
None of us ate breakfast before this recording. Y'all niggas is killing me right now.
Yes.
Yes. Biscuits and
What is your home meal, Akua? I'm
So
curious.
my whole meal consists of, just like yours, macaroni and cheese. It is either my 3 cheese or my 4 cheese baked macaroni and cheese with a baked salmon, probably with a garlic butter, and
Ooh.
then some type of vegetable. Depends on, where I am. Probably most likely a go-to is broccoli, but I've fallen in love with Brussels sprouts, and the way I saute them, they just like melt in your mouth. I'm sorry, I'm hungry. And then I will, like, if I'm really trying to, like, if I'm digging into my pick me kind of space, I might bake you a cake. Like, I might pull out the red velvet
You're one of
cake.
those bitches.
Dessert.
Yeah, I might do it depending on who the nigga is. But if that's like to seduce you, to get you all sluggish, and then we're gonna figure it out.
Okay.
But if I really, really like you, I will, if I really, really like you and I'm digging into my pick me, you gonna wife me pot, I will cook you jollof rice. And I don't make jollof rice for a lot of people,
Ooh.
but I will
Aku
pull
ain't
out
never
that
even made
pot.
jollof for me, okay?
Exactly. I will pull
Um,
out that pot and get to going. Yeah, those are the things.
This is why I gotta work on my oxtail this summer. Not this summer, this winter when it's still cold. I'm gonna be cooking in the summer. And then that'll be my seductive peak Jamaican pygmy. That is some jerk pork. Damn, y'all fucked me up. I'm really hungry right now.
Ooh, that sounds good. I'm like, all of that sounds delicious. See, okay, yeah, the cake, yeah, that all of that. I'm like, cool. Can you seduce me? Like, I was just like,
You talked about the biscuits and the gravy. I was like, can I get this meal? Like, we both.
I'm working and I'm learning how. I haven't done it yet. But I will keep you all posted. I bought biscuit cutters, and so I am planning to sometime soon start learning how to make homemade biscuits because I don't currently know how, but I would like to learn too because I want to be that bitch.
I'm so hungry.
I want to be the person that, and you know the Jill Scott song when she's talking about people making breakfast. I want to be that person that I'm making you biscuits from scratch.
Your politics got to be on point though. That's the
Yes.
one.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we got to get off food because I can't do this anymore. But speaking of politics, so we know that you create programming that educates folks on the topics of race, gender, and sexual orientation and power, which seems very relevant to your lived experiences. Because if niggas had this education, maybe things would be going a little bit more smooth. But so where is that happening? How's it going? What's going on?
Yes. So it started really being like inside the academy because that's where I was. So like I have done a couple of workshops for some of the cultural centers that happened there. And then I also have done a few for the community. So I did a series actually a couple of months ago. I did a 3-part series with the Dunbar Pavilion Center. Shout out to the Dunbar. The Dunbar is a Black center here. The Dunbar, it used to be Dunbar High School, which is in the Dunbar Springs, which is one of the neighborhoods here in Tucson. It was the Black only high school because Tucson did used to be segregated. And so the community bought it and uses it as like a community center. And so I've done workshops with them. And so and then I just recently did a workshop with the Sierra Club, a 2-part, I did 2 workshops with them. So I am branching out, I'm expanding outside of the academy. And I actually have a workshop series that I'm doing for my 2 jobs that I have. One of them is going to be like a 7-week series where we're going to do a different workshop each week. So it's happening in various spaces. It's been a lot easier to do because we are in digital age of Zoom to be able to do more. Because before, a lot of workshops happened like in a physical location. So then like that, only people who were there in that moment, who were able to physically be present, were able to have access to that. So on the one hand, while I do miss in-person workshops and facilitation, because there is just something really cool about going to different places and being like in person with folks, I do appreciate how Zoom and all of the other Zoom-esque things have created this access that we really didn't, that we like kind of sort of thought about before, but like we're much more aware of like, how do we make this accessible to folks? How do we make this interactive for people? So yes, that is where that is happening. I will give you an email if folks are interested in hiring me so we can do a consultation. I can tell you what my prices are, and we can figure that out and set that up.
Better go on and get hired out here, Karlyn. Yes, we will definitely include all of the things in the show notes. As we're wrapping up, we have 2 very important questions for you. The first is, you mentioned something that blew my mind on a Patreon chat that we were doing a couple of weeks ago, and you informed me that Legends of Korra was trash politically.
Yes.
And I was like, oh shit, I didn't even look at it like that. So let us know. Restate your hot take on Korra.
Yes. Here's my hot take on Korra, and I'm right because I'm a Capricorn. I didn't like how they treated Korra, so I hated Legend of Korra, but I didn't hate it because I hated Korra. I didn't like how they treated her. I feel like it was a missed opportunity to show the right ways to move through trauma, right? And so I had said in the chat that the way that they treated Aang in his trauma, because traumatic things happened to Aang, they did not treat Korra with the same graciousness, and it felt racist. It felt like it was irresponsible for them to make this woman of color who was queer and who was dark skinned, and for them to what really felt like just mistreat her through the entire series. I felt like they disempowered her a lot for no reason. They didn't give her a very good support system like like Aang had. And it was really triggering to watch because I was just like, yeah, this is, I was like, this is how dark skinned people get treated, like shit. And so I wish that I wish that I could like Korra more. I wish that I could have seen Korra be cared for, because I think it's so important for us to not just have representation, but and you talk about this in Ask Media, that we need representation that is like intentional. And I don't think that they were intentional about how they treated Korra. Everyone, and how they didn't even unpack and explore some of the trauma that she experienced. Like, one of the people who betrayed her was like a family member, and that's devastating. And they didn't take time to be like, how would that fuck up your psyche? How would that impact you as the avatar when someone who you knew and loved was the person who betrayed you? And that's heartbreaking, right? And I don't think they did enough to overcome some of the bias that is built into anti-Blackness, right? Because Korra is dark skinned, so like colorism is tied to anti-Blackness. So like we're not automatically going to empathize with Korra because we've been taught that we don't need to, because she's a woman and because she's a dark skinned woman. So like we have been taught that those people are volatile and mean and are undeserving of our empathy. And they kind of made her like kind of mean, kind of brash, and didn't. And at moments, I was like, I feel irritated by the things that you're doing because they are not showing why you are doing these things. They're just showing you as being hot-headed and not telling me why do you respond this way? Why how I'm like, okay, you're using this as a defense mechanism. And I only know that because I too do the same thing. And I know it's because I have been harmed by people. And they needed to unpack that. They needed to walk us through that shit because again, we live in an anti-Black society that teaches us we don't need to empathize with dark-skinned girls.
Yeah.
And they failed us horribly with the way that they mistreated Korra. And one other thing that I wanted to say that I didn't get to say in the other conversation that was really important because my friend and I, shout out to Lexi, we had this really great conversation about what Korra being removed, being disconnected from her former avatars, how that was another added layer of violence. And we were like, okay, why does this feel super traumatizing and triggering to us? And it was like, oh, because that is actually a lived experience that like BIPOC people have of literally being removed from their culture. And for them to just like put it as a plot device, but then not really treat it with the nuance that it deserved of like, what does it mean for you to have to rediscover yourself because of like colonialism, was really irresponsible and it hurt. It was hurtful to like watch this happen to this fictional character because I was like, I embody that. I literally am currently on a journey of reconnecting with myself and my magic. This is like a random side note. Y'all had Juju Bay on your podcast and I listened to her. And it's funny because I rediscovered her through your podcast after another friend of mine was like, you'll love her. As I had started like getting into like ATR stuff myself, she was like, magic. She's like, here's a Black practitioner that I think that you'll gel with and you'll love, like you should learn from them. And then I was like, okay. And I had listened to an episode of this and I was like, I like this. And then I kind of like fell off. And then I listened to y'all and I was like, wait a second, I know her. Y'all just out here connecting me to all of these things. But it was irresponsible how they handled it. Because that's a lot of people's actual lived experiences because of colonialism. And for them to just be like, yeah, it would be cool to just like disconnect her from the avatars. And then like never, and I don't think they ever like remedied that. They were just like, oh well. Figure it out, bitch. And I'm just like, no, like this is not okay. That was really violent.
Spicy but extremely valid take. I gotta rewatch the show with better eyes, or maybe not, because I don't think I'm in the mood for that right now. But who has a question? Speaking of takes, spicy takes.
Oh, I was like, I do. Can you tell us a bit about your podcast and what they're about and, you know, the spicy takes you give on those, if any?
Yes. Okay. So one of them is the podcast that I host by myself. It's called Beneath the Surface. It has 2 episodes. Because I just haven't had the capacity to record more because y'all, for those of you who are not familiar, and like shout out to you all at IHU for all you do because podcasting is fucking hard. It takes a lot of time and energy and I'm terrible at editing. So I just haven't recorded any more episodes of Beneath the Surface. But it is something that I want to get back into. And that one is me just giving you my thoughts and my analysis on things that are happening. So the 2 episodes that currently exist, one of them are about like the presidential debates that happened like 5,000 years ago. And then The other was talking about the former president's response to Charlottesville. So, like, if that gives you context for how long it's been since I've recorded, it's been a minute, but I've been doing other stuff. And then the other podcast that's more recent and is updated more regularly is Comic Book Queens, and that one is with my cousin. We co-host that, and we talk about comics because we're blurs, and we love superheroes. We love fantasy genre stuff, and so it's just really us talking about heroes that we really like and giving our feminist analysis on like MCU movies and all that kind of stuff. So yes, you should definitely check them out.
That sounds so fun. I was looking at my phone because I was getting ready to subscribe. Well, thank you very much for spending the last hour and a half or so with us, Karlyn. It has been great hearing your perspective and insight on all of the things. Where can folks find you on the internet if you want them to find you on the internet? Where should folks
Yes.
go?
So if you want to find me on the interwebs, you can follow my Facebook. My Facebook is Karlyn Bradley, so just my first and last name. And then my Twitter is DawnTray1224. So Dawn Tray spelled phonetically. That's DAWNTRAY1224. So you can follow me on Twitter and you can see some of my tweets and hot takes there. And you can also follow me on Facebook where I post a little longer winded analyses of things.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. If this episode made you laugh, helped you learn something, made you feel good, made you question yourself in a good way, or positively moved you in any sense, please leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, and let everyone you know that you love these hoes, and let everyone you know. It's such a weird thing to say, that you enjoyed this episode with Karlyn, and definitely check them out on the interwebs. We appreciate every single last one of yours.
If you guys would like to follow us on social media, you can do so at Innerho Uprising without the G on Twitter, at Innerho Uprising on Instagram and Facebook. You can join our Facebook group by searching Innerho Uprising Community. That is CUMMUNITY. And head over to innerhouprising.com to pay a hoe. If you guys want to follow me, you can do so on Instagram at Hey, a Cool Girl.
And you can follow me at SlamRid on Instagram, Twitter, and Clubhouse if any of those things are what you're into. And don't forget that our sponsor today was BetterHelp, and you can get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/IHU. Have a lovely week because you motherfucking deserve to.
Bye.